I'm often asked about how I started off with my bonsai pots and do I actually have any examples left. Well, in fact I do have one. I've got one right here, this slab pot. You won't believe it. It was one of the very first pots I ever made, and I don't know whether you'll be able to see this, but in here it actually says 1978. 1978, that goes back. Now look how thick the walls are, okay? That was a result of pig ignorance, all right, on my part. I was told, be careful because the clay warps terribly. So I thought, right, if I make it nice and thick, it won't warp. Weighs a ton, all right? But anyway, this was a pot that I made, and I did it down at an adult art department here in Bristol, and it wasn't a teaching thing, it was really just to be able to use the facilities within the department, which was fine because I didn't have those things at home at that time, back in the 70s. So it has a nice glaze, and this pot was gas fired, which is known as reduction fired, and I used a white clay body, so this is old, sorry about the stains, and very, very static feet, not the sort of thing I do these days, but there we go. I do actually have my name here, believe it or not, Dan in those days, not Bonsai. That came later, but you can see here on the front of the pot how I've incised it. That was cut in after the pot was made, and believe me, not too clever to do. I love the glaze. I wish I could do this now, but I can't. And that's the problem. I don't have facilities for gas firing. My kiln is electric, which is fine, and I do all sorts of glaze tests to try to get various effects that will look as though they'd been gas fired. And in fact, many people have actually been surprised that when they see some of my pots that they haven't been. Anyway, that was as early a pot, I think, that I've got. I do have a couple of other pots here which I'd like to show you. This one here, oh, incidentally I should have said that that last pot was made with slabs of clay. This one, on the other hand, is coiled, and I've got incised corners. So by coiling, you've seen that on other videos, earlier videos that I've made, and I've got a texture on the bottom, big square hole here, very much inspired by the sort of holes that Gordon Duffett used to make, because he preceded me with potting, and again a different style of foot to the ones that I do nowadays, but it's very heavy. This pot was also reduction fired, and what is interesting is what happens is when you fire in a gas kiln, at a certain point all of the air gaps are sealed, so there's no air in the kiln, and what happens is for a flame, the gas flame, to continue, it's got to get its oxygen from somewhere. So it gets its oxygen from the oxides, etc., in the glazes and in the clay. And you can see how you've got these little dots of the iron which become apparent, and also the clay-based body is considerably darker than you get in an oxidized or electric kiln firing. I love this pot. It's one of my favourites. Again, one of the glazes that they had down at the college, which I have tried to replicate, but because this was gas fired, it gives a completely different result when I fire it in my electric kiln. It's got an interesting texture on the bottom, and not a lot more I can say about it. There is a date in here which says 80. So this was made in 1980. So what's that? 1980, 90, 1000, 2010, 22. That's 42 years old. Not bad, eh? Nearly 43 years old. It's even got PH2, which was the glaze type that they had down there. So that's that one, and I do have another one that I want to show you. So I'll put this to the side. This is one of my all-time favourite pots. This was also made at the art college before I had my own facilities, and it's interesting because I had this pale, almost duck-egg blue glaze, which I call pig fat because it feels like the skin of a dead pig when you see in the butcher shop, and it was fired by our technician. Okay, the glaze is made up with a copper oxide. It is added to the glazed body, and when fired in an electric kiln, you get this pale blue. But if the pot is fired in a gas kiln, in a reduction firing, it's totally different, and you get this red coming out. It's extraordinary how you get this extremely different glaze colour. Now the poor old technician, when she brought this out of the kiln, she was so apologetic about it because she realised her error. She'd put it in the gas kiln instead of the electric kiln, and she said, "I can fire it again, I can fire it again." And I said, no, that's okay, just leave it as it is. I love it. And you can't imagine how many people have been after this pot, but no, I keep it for myself. I overdid things a little bit with the drainage holes, and you can see I've only got 3 feet here. There was another one, a 4th one at one time, and the reason why I've only got the 3 feet is because there's a limited time you spend on these at the college, 2 hours. So you're making the pot, and the clay's so soft, you can't turn it upside down to put your normal feet on as I would normally do, and as I've shown you again in one of my earlier videos. So I had to, what I did was what was pushed out of these holes, I used to make little feet, which I fired in the pot separately, and then used good old araldite to stick them on afterwards. Wouldn't dream of doing that now, but there we go. That's how it was. And I've got the details here of the glaze used, AD1S, S being stoneware. And again, you can see how there's a lot of evidence of these little dots that come out, which don't happen on the pots when you fire them in an electric kiln. It's only in the gas kiln that you get this effect. Here I've actually got my name, Bonsai, 1990, and my Chinese chop. But yeah, very, very interesting glaze. Lots of faults in it, where it's crawled in places, and but I love it. It's an old pot. It's maturing nicely now. There is somebody that I promised it to. I hope he's forgotten. If he sees this video, he'll probably get back to me and say, "Hey, you said I could have that pot when you pop your clocks." Well, maybe.